Before this story begins, subscribe to the channel and type Amen in the comments. A beautiful piece of good news may come your way very soon. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. The afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Harrison Mitchell's corner office on the 45th floor of downtown Manhattan. At 42, he had built his tech empire from nothing, and now Mitchell Industries was worth over $3 billion. His salt and pepper beard was perfectly trimmed, his navy suit impeccable, and his steel blue eyes held the sharp focus that had made him one of the youngest billionaires in America. His phone buzzed with a text from his 8-year-old daughter, Madison. The blonde little girl with bright green eyes was the light of his life ever since his wife Sarah had passed away in a car accident 3 years ago. Madison lived with him in their sprawling estate in the affluent suburb of Westfield, where she attended Riverside Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the state. The text was simple. "Daddy, look, having lunch with friends." Harrison smiled as he opened the photo. Madison's beaming face filled the frame, her golden hair catching the fluorescent lights of what appeared to be the school cafeteria. She was wearing her favorite pink hoodie with sparkles on the front, the one she'd insisted on buying during their last shopping trip. But as his eyes moved beyond his daughter's radiant smile, something in the background made his blood run cold. Behind Madison, barely visible but unmistakable, was a smaller girl with platinum blonde hair. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, and she was kneeling on the floor next to a garbage can near the lunch tables. Standing over her was Mrs. Victoria Hensworth, Madison's teacher, a woman in her 50s with graying brown hair pulled back in a tight bun and cold, dark eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The scene was disturbing enough to make Harrison's hands tremble. Mrs. Hensworth appeared to be pointing aggressively at food scraps and discarded items in the trash bin, her mouth open as if giving harsh, degrading commands. The little blonde girl was crying desperately, her tiny hands pressed against her face as she shook her head repeatedly, clearly refusing whatever humiliating demand the teacher was making. Other children at nearby tables looked uncomfortable, some turning away from the horrifying scene while others watched in shocked silence. Harrison's heart raced as he enlarged the photo, hoping he was misunderstanding what he was seeing. But the more he studied it, the clearer it became. The little blonde girl's clothes were noticeably shabbier than the other children's. A faded yellow dress that had seen better days, scuffed shoes, and an expression of pure terror and humiliation as tears streamed down her cheeks. The teacher's body language was unmistakably threatening, her finger pointing aggressively downward toward the garbage bin while the child cowered and wept. Whatever degrading act Mrs. Hensworth was trying to force the little girl to perform with the trash, the child was courageously refusing despite her obvious terror and the psychological pressure being applied. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, his voice echoing in the empty office. Without hesitation, he grabbed his phone and dialed 911. His fingers moving with the urgency of a man who had just witnessed something unthinkable. 911, what's your emergency? This is Harrison Mitchell. I need police dispatched immediately to Riverside Academy on Oak Street. There's a teacher psychologically abusing a child, trying to force her to do something degrading involving garbage while she cries and refuses. I have photographic evidence. The dispatcher's voice remained professional but concerned. Sir, are you currently at the school? No, I'm downtown, but I'm leaving now. My daughter is a student there, and she inadvertently photographed what appears to be child abuse in progress. The teacher is trying to force a small child to do something involving trash while she cries and refuses. Please send officers immediately. Units are being dispatched now, Mr. Mitchell. Please remain calm and head to the school safely. Harrison was already moving, grabbing his keys and jacket. As he rushed toward the elevator, his mind raced with questions. Who was this little girl? How long had this been going on? And why hadn't any of the other teachers or staff noticed? Or worse, why hadn't they reported it? The elevator seemed to take forever to reach the ground floor. During those agonizing 30 seconds, Harrison studied the photo again, memorizing every detail. The timestamp showed it was taken just 12 minutes ago, which meant whatever was happening might still be in progress. The image of that small girl's tear-stained face, her desperate refusal even in the face of obvious intimidation, burned itself into his memory. His black Tesla was waiting in the executive parking space. As he sped through Manhattan traffic, Harrison called his assistant. "Cancel everything for the rest of the day, Patricia. Family emergency." "Of course, Mr. Mitchell. Is everything all right with Madison?" "Madison's fine, but there's a situation at her school involving another child. I'll explain later." The 20-minute drive to Westfield felt like hours. Harrison's mind kept returning to the image of that small, frightened girl, and his anger grew with each passing mile. As someone who had grown up in foster care himself, moving from one home to another after his parents died in a house fire when he was 7, he had zero tolerance for anyone who would harm a child. He knew what it felt like to be powerless, to be at the mercy of adults who saw you as nothing more than an inconvenience. By the time he reached Riverside Academy, 2 police cruisers were already in the parking lot, their red and blue lights casting eerie shadows across the brick facade of the school. Harrison parked and jogged toward the main entrance, where he was met by Detective Sandra Martinez, a woman in her 40s with short black hair and keen brown eyes. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Detective Martinez. Can you show me the photograph you mentioned?" Harrison handed her his phone, watching as her expression grew increasingly grim as she studied the image. "When was this taken?" "About 35 minutes ago. My daughter sent it to me without realizing what she'd captured in the background." Detective Martinez nodded grimly. "We've already spoken with the principal and she's granted us permission to investigate. The teacher in question, Victoria Hensworth, is currently in her classroom. We haven't approached her yet because we wanted to speak with you first." "What about the little girl in the photo? Is she okay?" "That's what we're trying to determine. The principal claims she doesn't immediately recognize the child from the description, which is concerning for a school this size." Harrison felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean she doesn't recognize her?" "Every student at this school should be familiar to the administration, especially one that young. If there's a child here who isn't properly enrolled or accounted for." Detective Martinez didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. They walked through the main hallway, past colorful bulletin boards covered with student artwork and achievement certificates. The normal sounds of a school day, children laughing, teachers instructing, the hum of daily activities, seemed surreal given what they were investigating. As they approached Mrs. Hensworth's classroom, Harrison could hear her voice through the closed door. She sounded normal, professional even, reading what appeared to be a story to her students. The disconnect between that ordinary sound and what he had seen in the photograph made his stomach turn. Detective Martinez motioned for Harrison to wait in the hallway as she knocked on the classroom door. Through the small window, he could see his daughter Madison sitting at her desk, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break around her. But as his eyes scanned the classroom searching for the little blonde girl from the photo, his heart sank. She was nowhere to be seen. The detective's knock interrupted Mrs. Hensworth's reading. Harrison watched through the window as the teacher's expression shifted from mild annoyance to something that looked almost like panic when she saw Detective Martinez's badge through the glass. Mrs. Hensworth opened the classroom door with what appeared to be her usual stern expression, but Harrison could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands as she gripped the door frame. "Yes? Can I help you?" she asked Detective Martinez, her voice carrying the clipped tone of someone trying to maintain control of a situation that was rapidly slipping away from her. "Mrs. Hensworth, I'm Detective Martinez with the Westfield Police Department. I need to speak with you about an incident that occurred in your classroom earlier today." For just a fraction of a second, something flickered across the teacher's face. Definitely fear this time, mixed with what looked like desperate calculation. Harrison, watching from the hallway, caught the moment when Mrs. Hensworth realized she was in serious trouble. "I'm sorry, but I'm in the middle of teaching my class. Perhaps you could come back after school hours?" She tried, but her voice lacked its usual authority. "I'm afraid this can't wait, ma'am. We have some questions about a photograph taken during lunch period today." Mrs. Hensworth's grip on the door handle tightened visibly, her knuckles turning white. "I don't understand. What photograph?" Detective Martinez held up Harrison's phone, showing the incriminating image. Mrs. Hensworth's face went pale as she stared at the screen, and Harrison saw her mouth open and close several times before any sound came out. I don't. That's not what it looks like, she stammered. But even she seemed to know how weak the protest sounded. Then perhaps you can explain what it actually is? Because what I see is you standing over a crying child who appears to be refusing to do something you're demanding of her. Harrison couldn't contain himself any longer. He stepped forward, his voice controlled but seething with barely contained fury. Where is she? Where is the little girl from the photo? Mrs. Hensworth's eyes darted between Harrison and Detective Martinez, and for a moment, she looked exactly like what she was. A cornered predator who had finally been caught. I don't know what you're talking about. All of my students are accounted for and properly cared for. That photograph must be taken out of context. Then you won't mind if we search the building and speak with your students? Detective Martinez asked, though her tone made it clear it wasn't really a question. The detective gently moved past Mrs. Hensworth into the classroom, where 24 third graders sat at their desks, wide-eyed at the unusual interruption. Harrison followed, immediately spotting Madison, who looked confused but not frightened. She waved at him with the innocent enthusiasm only an 8-year-old could muster in such a bizarre situation. Hi, Daddy. What are you doing here? Are you here for a surprise visit? Before Harrison could answer, Detective Martinez addressed the class in the gentle but professional tone she used when interviewing child witnesses. Good afternoon, children. I'm Detective Martinez, and I'm here to ask some questions about lunchtime today. I need you all to think carefully. Was there a little girl with blonde hair in your cafeteria who doesn't usually eat lunch with your class? The children exchanged glances, some looking genuinely puzzled, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Several hands went up hesitantly, and Detective Martinez nodded encouragingly at a girl with curly red hair. Yes, Detective, there was a girl there. She had really pretty blonde hair like a princess, but she looked really sad, the girl said, her voice small but clear. Madison raised her hand immediately, and Detective Martinez nodded for her to speak. Her name is Chloe, I think. She's not in our grade. She's younger than us, maybe 6 or 7. I've seen her around school sometimes, but she never gets to play with us. That's right, chimed in another student, a boy with dark hair and glasses. Chloe. She was crying really hard today because Mrs. Hensworth was being mean to her. Mrs. Hensworth's face had progressed from pale to an alarming shade of red. Children, that's enough. You're misunderstanding what you saw. Detective, I really must protest this interrogation of my students without proper. What exactly did you see, Mrs. Hensworth do to make Chloe cry? Detective Martinez asked the boy, completely ignoring the teacher's protest. The boy looked nervously at Mrs. Hensworth, then back at the detective. She was pointing at food scraps in the garbage can and telling Chloe she had to eat from the trash like an animal because she was worthless. But Chloe kept crying and saying no, and then Mrs. Hensworth got really angry and started yelling that ungrateful children deserved to eat garbage. A collective gasp went up from several parents who had apparently gathered in the hallway, having heard about the police presence at the school. Harrison felt his anger spike to dangerous levels. Another girl, this one with blonde braids, raised her hand tentatively. Mrs. Hensworth said if Chloe didn't eat from the trash like she was told, she would call the police and have Chloe's mommy arrested. That's when Chloe started crying even harder and saying, no, no, no. But Mrs. Hensworth kept pointing at the garbage. And she made Chloe kneel down on the floor for a really long time, added another boy, even when she was crying and saying her knees hurt. Harrison watched Mrs. Hensworth's face cycle through several emotions: panic, anger, desperation. She was clearly trying to think of a way out of this situation, but the children's testimonies were painting a picture that was impossible to deny or explain away. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step outside with me right now, Detective Martinez said firmly to Mrs. Hensworth. Officer Johnson will escort you while we continue speaking with the children. As Mrs. Hensworth was led toward the door, her composure finally cracked completely. You don't understand. That child's mother is a drug addict who abandoned her here. I was trying to teach her responsibility and consequences. Sometimes children need to learn. Ma'am, anything else you say can and will be used against you. Detective Martinez cut her off sharply. Officer Johnson, please read Mrs. Hensworth her rights and escort her to the patrol car. As the teacher was led away, her protests echoing down the hallway, the children visibly relaxed. Detective Martinez turned back to them with a gentle smile. "You've all been very brave and helpful. Now can anyone tell me where Chloe is right now?" The children looked at each other uncertainly. Finally, Madison spoke up. "I saw Mrs. Hensworth take her away after lunch. She was still crying and Mrs. Hensworth was pulling her by the arm toward the basement stairs." "The basement?" Harrison's voice was sharp with concern. A boy named Tyler nodded solemnly. "Mrs. Hensworth takes kids down there when they're in trouble, but usually just for a few minutes. Chloe's been gone for like 2 hours." Detective Martinez and Harrison exchanged alarmed glances. A 6-year-old child had been locked in a basement for 2 hours as punishment for refusing to degrade herself. "Can you show us where the basement entrance is?" Detective Martinez asked Tyler. "Sure, but we're not supposed to go down there, Mrs. Hensworth says there are scary things in the basement that will get bad children." Harrison's jaw clenched. The psychological manipulation was almost as disturbing as the physical abuse. They were joined in the hallway by Principal Janet Morrison, a nervous woman in her 60s who kept wringing her hands. She looked completely overwhelmed by the situation unfolding in her school. "Detective Martinez, I've been trying to locate this Chloe in our enrollment records, but I'm not finding any student by that name," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "What about the security footage from today's lunch period?" Detective Martinez asked. Principal Morrison's face fell even further. "That's another problem. Mrs. Hensworth told me yesterday that our security system needed emergency maintenance and had it shut down. She said the repair company couldn't get here until tomorrow." Harrison and Detective Martinez shared another significant look. The timing was far too convenient to be coincidental. "Principal Morrison," Harrison said, his voice deadly calm. "How long has Mrs. Hensworth worked here?" 15 years. She's been a model employee until today, obviously. I can't understand what's happened." Just then, Eddie Rodriguez, the school's maintenance supervisor, approached them in the hallway. He was an older man with kind eyes and work-worn hands, wearing a janitor's uniform. He looked deeply troubled. "Excuse me," he said hesitantly to Detective Martinez. "I couldn't help but overhear about the little blonde girl. Is her name Chloe?" All eyes turned to him. "Yes," Detective Martinez said. "Do you know her?" Eddie nodded slowly, his expression growing increasingly uncomfortable. "She's not supposed to be enrolled here. Mrs. Hensworth has been bringing her to school for exactly 1 month now. I know because I started keeping track when I realized something wasn't right. Told everyone she was doing a favor for a family in crisis, watching the kid while the mother dealt with serious medical problems." "What kind of problems?" Harrison asked. "Mrs. Hensworth said the mother was sick and couldn't care for the child properly. Said she was helping out until other arrangements could be made. But the way she's been treating that little girl..." Eddie shook his head sadly. "I've wanted to say something for weeks, but Mrs. Hensworth made it clear that if I interfered, she'd find a reason to get me fired." "What exactly have you witnessed?" Detective Martinez pulled out her notepad. Eddie looked around nervously, then seemed to steel himself. "I've wanted to report this for the entire month, but Mrs. Hensworth made it clear that if I interfered, she'd find a reason to get me fired. She's been systematically breaking that child's spirit. Makes Chloe clean the bathrooms with her bare hands. Forces her to eat lunch separately from the other children. And not proper food either, just scraps or leftovers from other kids' plates. She's made that poor baby sleep in the supply closet during nap time while the other kids get mats in the classroom. And the verbal cruelty." He shuddered. "Constantly telling the child she's worthless, that her mother abandoned her, that she should be grateful anyone bothers with a throwaway child like her." Harrison felt something dark and violent rise in his chest. The systematic psychological torture of a 6-year-old was beyond his ability to process rationally. "And today?" Detective Martinez prompted. "Today was the worst I've seen in this entire month of hell. During lunch, some milk got spilled, not even by Chloe, but by one of the other kids. Mrs. Hensworth made Chloe get on her hands and knees to clean it up, then started pointing at food scraps and garbage in the trash bin and..." Eddie's voice broke slightly. "She was commanding that baby to eat from the garbage like an animal. telling her that's what worthless children deserve. When Chloe refused and started crying, begging not to be made to do it, Mrs. Hensworth became furious and dragged her downstairs, screaming about teaching ungrateful brats their place. The hallway fell silent except for the sound of Harrison's harsh breathing. Detective Martinez placed a restraining hand on his arm, recognizing the signs of a man on the edge of violence. "Where exactly in the basement?" she asked Eddie. "There's a storage room at the end of the main corridor. Mrs. Hensworth has a key to all the rooms down there." "But Detective," Eddie's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, "I heard her on the phone this morning, talking about making arrangements for the child. Something about how this situation needed to be resolved permanently." The implications of that statement hit everyone simultaneously. This wasn't just abuse. There might be something far more sinister happening. "Take us there now," Detective Martinez ordered. As they headed toward the basement stairs, Harrison's phone buzzed with a text from Madison, who was now with the school counselor. "Daddy, is Chloe going to be okay? She's always so nice to me even though she looks sad all the time." The message broke something loose in Harrison's chest. His own daughter, secure and loved and protected, had noticed another child suffering and cared about it. Meanwhile, he had been oblivious to the fact that somewhere in his city, a little girl was being systematically tortured by someone who should have been protecting her. They reached the basement level, and Eddie led them down a dimly lit corridor lined with storage rooms and utility closets. The basement smelled of cleaning supplies and dampness, and the fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, creating an atmosphere that would be terrifying for any child, let alone one who had been locked down here as punishment. "It's that door at the end," Eddie said, pointing to a heavy wooden door with a simple latch lock, the kind designed to keep people out, but clearly being used to keep someone in. As they approached, they could hear something that made Harrison's heart break. The quiet sound of a child crying, muffled but persistent. The kind of hopeless weeping that came from someone who had given up believing that help was coming. Detective Martinez reached for the latch, then paused. "Mr. Mitchell, I need you to prepare yourself. A child who's been through this kind of trauma may be very frightened of adults, even ones who are trying to help." Harrison nodded, though he wasn't sure how anyone could prepare for what they were about to find. Detective Martinez lifted the latch and slowly pushed the door open. The sight that greeted them was one that would haunt Harrison's dreams for years to come. The storage room was barely 6 feet by 8 feet, lined with metal shelving units filled with old textbooks and cleaning supplies. The air was stale and thick, and the only light came from a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. In the corner, huddled on the concrete floor, was the smallest, most heartbreaking figure Harrison had ever seen. Chloe looked even tinier in person than she had in the photograph. She couldn't have weighed more than 40 pounds, her platinum blonde hair tangled and matted, her yellow dress now stained with tears and dirt from the basement floor. Her small arms were wrapped around her knees, and she was rocking back and forth slightly, the way traumatized children sometimes did to self-soothe. But it was her eyes that shattered Harrison's heart completely. When she looked up at the adults in the doorway, those blue eyes, so remarkably similar to his own, held a depth of fear and resignation that no 6-year-old should ever experience. She had been crying for so long that her face was blotchy and swollen, her breath coming in little hiccups. "Please don't hurt me," she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "I'm sorry I was bad. I'll try to be better, I promise." Detective Martinez immediately crouched down, making herself as small and non-threatening as possible. "Sweet girl, we're not here to hurt you. My name is Sandra, and I'm a police officer. We're here to help you get somewhere safe." Chloe's eyes darted frantically between the detective and Harrison, clearly trying to assess whether these new adults represented more danger. "Is Mrs. Hensworth coming back? She said she had to think about what to do with me because I wouldn't listen." "Mrs. Hensworth is not going to hurt you anymore," Harrison said gently, his voice thick with emotion. "She's gone, and she's never coming back to bother you." For the first time, Chloe looked directly at him, and Harrison felt a jolt of recognition that went beyond physical resemblance. There was something in her expression, a quiet intelligence mixed with wariness that reminded him powerfully of himself at that age. "Are you a police officer too?" she asked Harrison. "No, sweetheart. I'm..." He paused, unsure how to explain his presence. "I'm someone who heard you needed help and I came as fast as I could." Detective Martinez continued speaking in soothing tones. "Chloe, can you tell us about your mama? We'd like to help you get back to her." At the mention of her mother, Chloe's face crumpled again. "Mama's really sick. She's in the hospital, and the doctors don't know if she's going to get better. Mrs. Hensworth said she would take care of me, but then she started being mean and making me do scary things." "What kind of scary things?" Detective Martinez asked gently. Chloe's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She made me clean the bathrooms with no gloves and my hands got all red and burny from the chemicals. And she said I couldn't eat with the other kids because I wasn't a real student, just a charity case. She made me eat standing up in the corner, and sometimes there wasn't enough food left." Harrison felt his hands clench into fists, but he forced himself to remain calm for Chloe's sake. "She told me my mama didn't really want me anymore and that's why she was sick," Chloe continued, fresh tears starting to flow. "She said if I didn't do what she told me, she would make sure I never saw mama again." The systematic psychological cruelty was almost worse than the physical abuse. Mrs. Hensworth had deliberately attacked every source of security and love in this child's life. "Chloe," Detective Martinez said carefully, "Mrs. Hensworth lied to you about many things. Your mama loves you very much, and none of this is your fault." As they helped Chloe to her feet, Harrison noticed she was clutching something in her small fist. When she saw him looking, she opened her hand to reveal a small tarnished locket on a delicate silver chain. Harrison's world stopped. He knew that locket. He had chosen it carefully 7 years ago, selecting the one with the small rose engraved on the front because the shop owner had told him roses symbolized eternal love. He had given it to Jennifer Parker on the night he told her he was falling in love with her, 3 months before his world exploded, and he made the biggest mistake of his life by walking away. "That's a beautiful locket," he managed to say, his voice barely steady. Chloe looked down at the jewelry in her palm. "My mama gave it to me before she got really sick. She said it was from my daddy, but I never met him. Mama said he's important and busy, and he doesn't know about me. She said maybe someday I'd get to meet him, but probably not because he lives in a different world than we do." The words hit Harrison like physical blows. Jennifer had been pregnant when he left. She had known she was carrying his child, and she had chosen to disappear rather than complicate his already chaotic life. She had spent 7 years raising their daughter alone, working multiple jobs to make ends meet, and now she was dying in a hospital while their little girl was being tortured by a monster. "Chloe," he said carefully, "what's your mama's full name?" "Jennifer Marie Parker, but everyone calls her Jenny. She works at 3 different restaurants because she says we need the money for rent and food and my doctor visits." Harrison's vision blurred slightly. Jennifer had been working 3 jobs to support their daughter, while he lived in a mansion and worried about which luxury car to drive to work. Detective Martinez was watching Harrison carefully, noting the profound change in his expression. "Mr. Mitchell, are you all right? I need to make some phone calls," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Detective, can you stay with Chloe while I—" "Are you sad?" Chloe's small voice interrupted him. Harrison looked down at her, this precious little girl who had endured so much and was still worried about a stranger's feelings. "I'm sad that you've been hurt, sweetheart, but I'm also hopeful that things are going to get much better for you very soon. Do you think my mama's going to be okay?" Mrs. Hensworth said she was probably going to die because she doesn't take care of herself. The casual cruelty of that statement made Harrison's anger spike again. "I think your mama is very strong, just like you are, and I'm going to make sure she gets the best doctors and all the help she needs." Chloe looked at him with curiosity. "Are you rich? Mrs. Hensworth always talks about rich people like they're bad, but you seem nice." Harrison knelt down to her level, and for the first time since they'd found her, Chloe didn't flinch away from an adult. "Some rich people are bad, and some poor people are bad, and some people in between are bad too. But there are also good people everywhere, and the good people try to help each other when they can." "I wish my daddy was a good person," Chloe said wistfully. "Mama says she doesn't know if he is or not, because she didn't get to know him long enough to find out." Harrison felt his heart breaking all over again. What would you want to say to your daddy if you ever met him? Chloe considered this seriously. I'd want to know why he didn't want to meet me. And I'd want to tell him that Mama never said mean things about him, even when she was sad. She always said maybe he would have stayed if he'd known about me. The accuracy of that statement was devastating. Harrison knew with absolute certainty that he would have married Jennifer the moment he learned she was pregnant. He would have moved heaven and earth to protect both of them. Instead, he had been so focused on clearing his name and saving his company that he'd never even considered the possibility that Jennifer might need him. As they began walking toward the basement stairs, Chloe slipped her tiny hand into Harrison's. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt like the most important moment of his entire life. "Mister," she said as they climbed the stairs, "what's your name?" "My name is Harrison," he replied. "What do you think of that name?" Chloe tilted her head, considering. "It's a grown-up name, very important sounding. Are you important?" "I used to think I was," Harrison said honestly. "But today I learned that the most important thing I could ever be is someone who protects children who need help." When they reached the main floor, they were greeted by a scene of controlled chaos. Principal Morrison was dealing with concerned parents. Several teachers were gathered in worried clusters, and reporters had somehow already gotten word of the situation and were being kept at bay by additional officers. Detective Martinez led them to a quiet office away from the commotion. "Mr. Mitchell, I need to ask you directly. Do you believe this child might be your daughter?" Harrison looked at Chloe, who was sitting in a chair next to him, still holding his hand. The physical resemblance was undeniable, but it was more than that. It was the way she tilted her head when she was thinking, the determined set of her jaw even when she was frightened, the quiet intelligence in her eyes despite everything she'd been through. "Yes," he said simply. "I know it sounds impossible, but yes. I was involved with her mother 7 years ago, and the timing, the locket, everything fits." Detective Martinez nodded. "We'll need to arrange for DNA testing to confirm paternity, and there are legal procedures we'll need to follow. But first, we need to get Chloe to a hospital to make sure she's physically okay, and we need to locate her mother." "Mama's at Metropolitan General Hospital," Chloe said helpfully. "She's on the 4th floor in room 412. The nurses there are really nice. They gave me crackers when I visited before Mrs. Hensworth said I couldn't go anymore." Harrison felt another surge of anger. Mrs. Hensworth had cut Chloe off from her dying mother, leaving the child completely isolated and vulnerable. "Would you like to go see your mama?" Harrison asked gently. Chloe's face lit up for the first time since they'd found her. "Really? Mrs. Hensworth said I couldn't see her anymore because it would make Mama sicker to worry about me. But I miss her so much, and I want to tell her about all the scary things that happened." "You're going to see your Mama very soon," Detective Martinez promised. "And Mrs. Hensworth was lying about that too. Seeing you will probably help your Mama feel better." As they prepared to leave for the hospital, Harrison's phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Daddy, the counselor told me you're helping a little girl who was hurt. Can she come to our house for dinner sometime? I want to be her friend." The message brought tears to Harrison's eyes. His daughter, his known daughter, had a heart big enough to welcome a sister she didn't even know existed yet. "Chloe," he said carefully, "would you like to meet my daughter Madison? She's the girl who took the picture that helped us find you. She's 8 years old and she's been worried about you." Chloe's eyes widened. "She was worried about me? But she doesn't even know me." "Good people worry about other people, even when they don't know them very well," Harrison explained. "Madison saw that you were sad and scared, and she wanted to help." For the first time since the ordeal began, Chloe smiled. It was small and tentative, but it was real. "I'd like to meet her. I've never had a friend before." Harrison's heart clenched. This beautiful, brave little girl had never had a friend. She had spent 6 years of her life struggling alongside her mother, then the last month being systematically abused by someone who should have protected her. But that was going to change. Starting today, Chloe Parker was going to learn what it meant to be safe, loved, and protected. She was going to discover that there were good people in the world who would move mountains to keep children safe, and that no one would ever again try to force her to degrade herself or eat from garbage cans while she cried and begged them to stop. As they walked toward the police car that would take them to the hospital, Harrison made a silent promise. He was going to spend the rest of his life making up for the 7 years he had missed. He was going to be the father that Chloe deserved, and he was going to make sure that no one ever hurt her again. The locket bounced gently against Chloe's chest as she walked beside him, her small hand still tucked trustingly in his. It was a symbol of a love that had never really died, just waited patiently for the right moment to be rekindled into something stronger than ever before. Justice for Mrs. Hensworth would come later. Right now, the most important thing in Harrison Mitchell's world was a 6-year-old girl who was about to discover that sometimes fairy tales did come true, even for little girls who had given up believing in happy endings. The drive to Metropolitan General Hospital felt both endless and too short. Harrison sat in the back of Detective Martinez's patrol car with Chloe, who had finally stopped crying, but remained curled against his side like a small, wounded animal seeking warmth. Every few minutes she would look up at him with those impossibly blue eyes, as if trying to memorize his face in case he disappeared like everyone else in her short life had. "Mr. Harrison," she said quietly as they pulled into the hospital parking lot, "what if Mama doesn't remember me? She was really sick the last time I saw her, and sometimes sick people forget things." Harrison's heart clenched at the worry in her voice. "Sweetheart, mamas never forget their babies. Ever. Your mama has been thinking about you every single day, wondering if you're okay and wishing she could hold you." Detective Martinez parked near the emergency entrance and turned to face them. "Before we go up to see your mother, Chloe, the doctors are going to want to check you over to make sure you're not hurt. Is that okay?" Chloe nodded solemnly. "Mrs. Hensworth never hit me with her hands, but she made me use the cleaning stuff that burned my skin. And she wouldn't let me go to the bathroom sometimes when she was mad, so my tummy hurt a lot." Harrison closed his eyes briefly, fighting another wave of rage. The systematic nature of the psychological torture was becoming clearer with every detail Chloe revealed. Inside the hospital, they were met by Dr. Amanda Chen, a pediatrician who specialized in cases involving child abuse. She was a small woman with gentle hands and the kind of voice that could calm frightened children. "Hello, Chloe," Dr. Chen said, crouching down to the little girl's level. "I'm Dr. Chen, and I help children who haven't been feeling well. Detective Martinez told me you've had some scary experiences, and I'd like to make sure you're healthy and safe. Would that be okay?" Chloe looked up at Harrison uncertainly. "Will you stay with me?" "If you want me to, I'll stay right here," Harrison promised, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The examination revealed what Harrison had feared: evidence of neglect and psychological abuse, but thankfully no signs of physical violence. Chloe was underweight, dehydrated, and had contact dermatitis on her hands from harsh cleaning chemicals. Her arms and legs showed no bruises, but her overall demeanor spoke of a child who had been living in constant fear. "She'll need regular meals, plenty of fluids, and some cream for her hands," Dr. Chen told Harrison quietly while Chloe was getting dressed. "But physically, she's remarkably resilient. The psychological healing will take longer, but children are amazingly adaptable when they feel safe." "She'll feel safe," Harrison said with quiet certainty. "I'm going to make sure of that." Dr. Chen studied him carefully. "Detective Martinez mentioned you might be Chloe's biological father." "I believe so. We're arranging for DNA testing, but..." Harrison gestured helplessly. "Look at her. The resemblance is unmistakable, and I was involved with her mother at the right time. I just didn't know Jennifer was pregnant when I left. These situations are complicated," Dr. Chen said kindly. "What matters now is that Chloe has someone who wants to protect her. Her mother is very ill, Mr. Mitchell. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She's been fighting for months, but her prognosis isn't good." The words hit Harrison like a physical blow. Jennifer was dying, and she had been fighting this battle alone while their daughter was being abused by someone who was supposed to care for her. "How long does she have?" he asked. "Weeks, possibly a few months with aggressive treatment. She's been asking about her daughter constantly. The nurses say it's the only thing keeping her fighting." Harrison nodded grimly. "Then let's not keep her waiting any longer." They took the elevator to the 4th floor, and Harrison felt his nerves increasing with each floor they passed. He was about to see Jennifer for the first time in 7 years, under circumstances he could never have imagined. The woman he had walked away from was dying, and they shared a daughter who had been suffering while he lived in ignorance. Room 412 was at the end of a long hallway lined with the antiseptic smell of hospital disinfectant and the quiet beeping of medical equipment. Through the partially open door, Harrison could see a figure in the hospital bed, small and still beneath white sheets. Chloe had gone very quiet, pressing closer to Harrison's side. "What if she's too sick to see me?" she whispered. "Then we'll wait until she feels better," Harrison assured her. "But I think seeing you is exactly what she needs." Detective Martinez knocked gently on the doorframe. "Ms. Parker, there are some people here who would very much like to see you." The voice that answered was weak but unmistakably familiar, with the same gentle cadence Harrison remembered from 7 years ago. Is it Chloe? Please tell me it's Chloe." Harrison pushed the door open wider, and his heart broke at what he saw. Jennifer Parker was barely recognizable as the vibrant, laughing woman he had once loved. Cancer had stolen her curves, her color, and most of her beautiful auburn hair. But her eyes, those warm brown eyes that had captivated him years ago, were exactly the same, and they filled with tears the moment she saw her daughter. "My baby girl," Jennifer whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "Oh, my sweet baby girl." Chloe ran to the bed, carefully climbing up to curl against her mother's side. "Mama, I missed you so much. Mrs. Hensworth said I couldn't come see you anymore, but these nice people brought me back to you." Jennifer's eyes moved from her daughter to Harrison, and the recognition was immediate and profound. Her mouth fell open in shock, and for a long moment, she couldn't speak. "Hello, Jenny," Harrison said softly, using the nickname only her closest friends had known. "Harry?" she whispered, using his own forgotten nickname. "But how? Why are you?" Her eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. "Oh God, you saw her, you know." Harrison moved closer to the bed, his eyes never leaving Jennifer's face. "I know she's mine. I know you've been raising our daughter alone for 7 years, and I know I have 7 years of mistakes to make up for." Jennifer's hand found Chloe's hair, stroking it gently as tears streamed down her face. "I tried to find you when I found out I was pregnant, but your company said you were unavailable and couldn't be reached. Then I saw the news about the lawsuit and the business troubles, and I thought you had enough problems without adding an unexpected baby to them." "You should have tried harder," Harrison said, but there was no anger in his voice, only profound sadness. "I would have married you, Jenny. I would have taken care of both of you." "I know that now," Jennifer said quietly, "but I was 22 and scared, and you seem so far above my world. I convinced myself you were better off not knowing." Chloe looked back and forth between the adults, her young mind trying to process the conversation. "Mama, is Mr. Harrison my daddy?" Jennifer looked at Harrison, a question in her eyes. He nodded slightly, giving her permission to tell their daughter the truth. "Yes, baby," Jennifer said softly. "Mr. Harrison is your daddy." The word daddy hit Harrison like lightning. He was a father to this precious little girl, this brave child who had endured so much and still had room in her heart for love and hope. Chloe studied Harrison's face seriously. "Are you going to go away again?" The question was so direct, so innocent, and so devastating that Harrison felt his knees go weak. He sat down heavily in the chair beside Jennifer's bed. "No, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm never going away again. I didn't know about you before, but now that I do, nothing in the world could make me leave you." "Promise?" Chloe asked, holding out her tiny pinky finger. Harrison wrapped his much larger pinky around hers, making the most important promise of his life. "I promise, forever and always." Detective Martinez, who had been standing quietly in the doorway, cleared her throat gently. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to discuss the legal situation. Mrs. Hensworth is in custody, and we'll need statements from both of you. There's also the matter of Chloe's living situation while Ms. Parker is receiving treatment." Jennifer's face crumpled with worry. "I don't have any family who can take her. That's why I trusted Victoria. Mrs. Hensworth. She seemed so professional, so caring. I had no idea she would. Her voice broke. She'll stay with me, Harrison said immediately. I'll file for emergency custody today. But you don't know anything about taking care of a little girl, Jennifer protested weakly. Harrison smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt all day. Then you'll have to teach me. I have a very good nanny for Madison, my other daughter, and plenty of room. Chloe will be safe and loved while you focus on getting better. Other daughter? Jennifer's eyes widened. I got married a few years after we lost touch, Harrison explained. My wife died 3 years ago and Madison is 8 now. She's already asked if Chloe can come for dinner because she wants to be her friend. Chloe perked up at this information. I'm going to have a sister? You're going to have a sister, a big house to play in, and all the toys and books and pretty dresses you could ever want, Harrison promised. For the first time since they'd found her, Chloe smiled broadly, showing a gap where she'd recently lost a tooth. Can I really have books? Mrs. Hensworth said books were for real students, not charity cases. Harrison felt that familiar surge of anger toward Mrs. Hensworth, but he pushed it down. You can have so many books we'll need extra bookshelves. And you are not a charity case, Chloe Parker. You are my daughter, and that makes you one of the most important people in the world. Jennifer watched this exchange with a mixture of relief and heartbreak. She was losing the time she had left with her daughter, but she was also seeing Chloe's face light up with possibilities she had never been able to provide. Harry, she said quietly, there's something else you need to know. Chloe is. She's special, exceptionally intelligent. She taught herself to read when she was 4, and she understands things that children her age shouldn't be able to grasp. Mrs. Hensworth was threatened by it, but you need to nurture it. Harrison looked at Chloe with new understanding. That explained the mature way she spoke, the thoughtful questions, the quiet dignity she maintained even in the worst circumstances. I'll make sure she gets the best education possible, he promised. And Jennifer, I'm going to make sure you get the best medical care too. Whatever it costs, whatever experimental treatments are available, we'll try everything. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears again. Harry, I'm dying. The doctors have been very clear about that. Then we'll prove them wrong, Harrison said with the same determination that had built his business empire. And if we can't, then we'll make sure every day you have left is filled with everything you and Chloe have been missing. 3 weeks later, Harrison's life had been turned completely upside down in the most wonderful way possible. The DNA test had confirmed what his heart already knew. Chloe was his biological daughter. The emergency custody hearing had gone smoothly, with Jennifer's blessing and Detective Martinez's testimony about the abuse Chloe had suffered. Mrs. Victoria Hensworth was facing multiple charges, including child endangerment, kidnapping, and fraud. The investigation had revealed that she had been embezzling money from the school for years, and Chloe's situation had been part of a larger pattern of manipulating vulnerable families. She would likely spend the rest of her life in prison, but the real transformation had happened at home. Harrison's estate in Westfield had been quiet for too long, filled with the careful silence of a widower and his well-behaved daughter. Now it rang with the sounds of 2 little girls laughing, playing, and slowly becoming the sisters Harrison had hoped they would be. Madison had embraced her new role as big sister with enthusiasm that surprised even Harrison. She helped Chloe pick out clothes each morning, read her bedtime stories, and appointed herself as Chloe's official protector at school. Chloe, for her part, worshipped Madison with the devotion of a child who had never had a friend, let alone a sister. "Daddy," Madison said one evening as Harrison tucked her into bed, "Chloe has nightmares sometimes. She cries for her mama, and sometimes she asks if Mrs. Hensworth is coming back. Can you help her not be scared anymore?" Harrison's heart ached for his younger daughter, who was still processing the trauma she had experienced. "I'm trying, sweetheart. Chloe has been through some very scary things, but every day she feels a little safer. Having you as her big sister is helping her more than you know. I told her that families protect each other," Madison said seriously, "and that she's part of our family now, so nothing bad will happen to her ever again." Harrison kissed his older daughter's forehead, marveling at her wisdom and compassion. "You're exactly right. We protect each other, no matter what. Down the hall, Chloe was sitting in her new bedroom. A room that had been transformed from a guest space into a little girl's paradise, complete with a canopy bed, shelves full of books, and a window seat where she could read while looking out at the gardens. She was wearing princess pajamas that Madison had picked out for her, and she was carefully writing in the journal that Dr. Sarah Williams, her child psychologist, had given her. Harrison knocked gently on her door. "Can I come in, sweetheart?" Chloe looked up from her writing and nodded. Her nightmares had been frequent in the first week, but they were gradually becoming less intense as she began to trust that she was truly safe. "What are you writing about tonight?" Harrison asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I'm writing about Mama," Chloe said, her voice growing quiet. "Dr. Williams said I should write down the good memories so I don't forget them when Mama goes to heaven." Harrison felt his throat tighten. Jennifer's condition had worsened despite the best medical care money could buy. The experimental treatments had slowed the cancer's progression, but they couldn't stop it. She had maybe weeks left, and they all knew it. "That's a very good idea," Harrison said gently. "What kind of memories are you writing about?" Chloe showed him the page, covered in her careful 6-year-old handwriting. "I wrote about how Mama used to sing to me when I was scared, and how she always made sure I had clean clothes even when we didn't have much money. And I wrote about how she gave me the locket and told me my daddy loved me even though he didn't know about me yet." Harrison blinked back tears. "Those are beautiful memories, Chloe. Your Mama loves you so much." "I know," Chloe said matter-of-factly. "But I love you too now, Daddy. Is that okay? Can I love Mama and you at the same time?" "Oh, sweetheart," Harrison said, pulling her into a gentle hug. "You can love as many people as your heart can hold. Love doesn't run out. It just keeps growing bigger." "Good," Chloe said, snuggling against his chest. "Because I love you and Madison and Mama and even Mrs. Rodriguez, who makes the good cookies in the kitchen." Harrison chuckled despite his emotions. Mrs. Rodriguez, their housekeeper, had taken one look at Chloe and immediately adopted her as another granddaughter to spoil. "Daddy," Chloe said suddenly, "when Mama goes to heaven, will you still want to keep me? Even if I get sad sometimes and cry?" The question broke Harrison's heart all over again. Even after 3 weeks of safety and love, Chloe still worried about being abandoned. "Chloe Marie Parker," he said seriously, using the full name that would soon legally become Chloe Marie Mitchell. "I will want to keep you forever and always, no matter what. When you're happy, when you're sad, when you're scared, when you're brave, I will always want you to be my daughter." Chloe smiled, the radiant smile that had become Harrison's favorite sight in the world. "Can we go see Mama tomorrow? I want to show her the picture Madison and I drew together." "Of course we can. We'll go first thing in the morning." The next morning brought unseasonably warm October weather, and Harrison decided to bring both girls to the hospital for what he suspected might be one of their last visits with Jennifer. She had been moved to hospice care the previous week, and while she was still alert and aware, she was getting weaker every day. Madison had insisted on coming along, wanting to meet Chloe's first Mama properly. The two girls chattered excitedly in the back seat about the drawing they had made, a picture of their family that included Jennifer as an angel watching over them all. At the hospital, they found Jennifer sitting up in bed, wearing a pretty nightgown instead of a hospital gown and looking more peaceful than Harrison had seen her in weeks. The hospice team had been wonderful about helping her maintain dignity and comfort in her final days. "My girls," Jennifer said softly as Chloe and Madison bounded into the room. "Come, let me see you." Chloe climbed carefully onto the bed while Madison hung back slightly, suddenly shy in the presence of someone so obviously ill. "Mama, this is Madison, my big sister," Chloe announced proudly. "Madison, this is my first Mama, the one I told you about." Madison stepped forward with the polite manners Harrison had taught her. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Parker. Chloe talks about you all the time. She says you're the bravest person she knows." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "And she tells me that you've been the best big sister anyone could ask for. Thank you for taking such good care of my baby girl. She's my sister now," Madison said simply. "That's what sisters do." The girls showed Jennifer their drawing, and she admired every crayon stroke with the enthusiasm only a mother could muster. Harrison watched from his chair, marveling at the scene. 3 weeks ago, he had been a single father with one daughter and a successful but ultimately empty life. Now he had 2 daughters, a deeper understanding of what truly mattered, and a sense of purpose that went beyond business deals and profit margins. "Harry," Jennifer said quietly while the girls were distracted by the activity book Madison had brought, "can we talk privately for a minute?" Harrison nodded and asked Mrs. Rodriguez, who had come along to help with the girls, to take them to the cafeteria for ice cream. When they were alone, Jennifer took his hand with fingers that were too thin and too cold. "I need to thank you," she said, "for everything you've done for Chloe, for me, for giving us this time together. I know this isn't how you plan to become a father to her. Jenny, you don't need to thank me. She's my daughter. This is what fathers do." "No," Jennifer said with surprising strength. "This is what good fathers do. What great fathers do. You stepped into an impossible situation and made it beautiful. Chloe goes to sleep every night feeling safe and loved, and she wakes up every morning excited about the day ahead. I haven't seen her that happy since before I got sick." Harrison squeezed her hand gently. "She's an extraordinary child. You did an amazing job raising her. I did my best, but it wasn't enough. She needed more than I could give her: stability, security, opportunities to grow into the brilliant person she's meant to become. You can give her those things." "We'll give them to her together," Harrison said, "for as long as we have." Jennifer smiled sadly. "Harry, I'm not going to see Christmas. We both know that. But I need to know that when I'm gone, you'll help her remember me. Not just the sick version of me, but the mama who sang to her and read her stories and loved her more than anything in the world." "I promise," Harrison said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I promise she'll know how brave you were, how hard you fought, and how much you sacrificed to give her the best life you could." "There's one more thing," Jennifer said, reaching into the drawer of her bedside table. She pulled out a small velvet box that Harrison recognized immediately. It was the engagement ring he had been planning to give her 7 years ago, the one he had bought but never had the chance to present. Harrison stared at the box in shock. "How do you have this?" "You left it on your dresser the morning you went to that big meeting with the lawyers. I found it when I came to get my things after you told me you needed to focus on clearing your name. I took it because I thought maybe someday when your life calmed down you might want to try again." Harrison opened the box with trembling hands. The ring was exactly as he remembered it. A simple solitaire diamond on a platinum band, elegant and timeless. "Jenny, I don't understand." "I want you to have it back," she said simply. "Someday you might find someone who deserves it. Someone who can be a mother to our girls and a partner to you. When that day comes, I want you to know that you have my blessing." Harrison felt tears streaming down his face. "I don't want anyone else. I want you to get better, and I want us to be a family." "Oh, Harry," Jennifer said softly. "We are a family. We'll always be a family. Death doesn't change love. It just changes the form it takes. I'll be watching over you and our girls from wherever I go next, and I'll be so proud of the father you've become." The girls returned then, chattering about their ice cream adventure, and the serious moment passed. They spent the rest of the afternoon reading stories and playing gentle games, with Jennifer soaking up every moment with her daughter. As they prepared to leave, Chloe hugged her mother tightly. "I love you, Mama," she whispered. "I love you too, baby girl, more than all the stars in the sky. Will you love me from heaven too?" "Every single day, sweetheart. And whenever you need me, just look at your locket and remember that love never really goes away." That night, Harrison put both girls to bed and then sat in his study, staring at the engagement ring Jennifer had returned to him. Tomorrow he would call his lawyers and begin the process of formally adopting Chloe. He would also establish a foundation in Jennifer's name to help other single mothers facing medical crises, ensuring that no other child would ever endure what Chloe had experienced. But tonight, he simply held the ring and mourned for the life they might have had, while simultaneously feeling grateful for the life they had found instead. Jennifer Parker passed away peacefully on a Tuesday morning in November, surrounded by love and holding Harrison's hand while Chloe slept, curled against her side. Her last words were a whispered, "Thank you," to Harrison, and "I love you forever" to her daughter. The funeral was small but beautiful, held in the gardens of Harrison's estate where Jennifer had spent her final weeks whenever she was strong enough to leave the hospital. Chloe, wearing a black dress with the silver locket prominently displayed, stood between Harrison and Madison as they said goodbye to the woman who had given them all the gift of understanding what truly mattered in life. 6 months later, the legal adoption was finalized and Chloe Marie Parker officially became Chloe Marie Mitchell. The judge who presided over the ceremony commented that he had rarely seen a child so clearly thriving in their new environment. And Chloe was thriving. Her exceptional intelligence, no longer suppressed by fear and neglect, began to blossom in remarkable ways. She was reading at a high school level, showing an aptitude for mathematics that astounded her tutors, and displaying an emotional intelligence that seemed far beyond her 7 years. "Daddy," she said one evening as Harrison helped her with a science project that was well above her grade level, "do you think Mama can see how smart I'm getting?" "I think your Mama knows exactly how brilliant you are," Harrison replied, watching as she carefully recorded her observations about plant growth under different light conditions. "And I think she's very proud of the young scientist you're becoming." Madison, now 9 and fiercely protective of her younger sister, looked up from her own homework. "Chloe's the smartest kid in our whole school. Even the 5th graders ask her for help with math." Harrison smiled at the pride in Madison's voice. The bond between his daughters had grown stronger every day, built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than mere circumstance. "Speaking of school," Harrison said, "I have some news. Mrs. Patterson called today." Both girls looked at him with curiosity. Mrs. Patterson was the principal of the prestigious private school they both now attended, where Chloe's academic gifts were being properly nurtured for the first time in her life. "The school board wants to invite Chloe to participate in a special program for exceptionally gifted children," Harrison continued. "It would mean some of her classes would be with older students who are working at her level." Chloe's eyes lit up with excitement, then quickly clouded with worry. "Would I still get to eat lunch with Madison?" "Every day," Madison said immediately. "We promised we'd always take care of each other, remember?" "That's right," Harrison confirmed. "This program is designed to challenge your mind while still letting you be a kid and spend time with children your own age." As the girls resumed their homework, Harrison reflected on how much their lives had changed. The media attention from Mrs. Hensworth's trial had been intense but ultimately positive, shining a light on the need for better oversight of private schools and stronger protections for vulnerable children. Harrison had used his platform to advocate for these changes, turning their personal tragedy into a force for good. Victoria Hensworth had been sentenced to 15 years in prison for child endangerment, kidnapping, fraud, and a host of other charges. During the trial, it had been revealed that Chloe wasn't her only victim. She had been systematically abusing children from poor families for years, knowing that their parents lacked the resources to fight back. But justice had been served, and more importantly, Chloe had healed. She still had occasional nightmares, and she still sometimes asked if people were going to leave her, but these moments were becoming increasingly rare. Most of the time, she was simply a happy, brilliant little girl who knew she was loved and protected. "Daddy," Chloe said suddenly, looking up from her science notebook, "I've been thinking about Mrs. Hensworth." Harrison felt his protective instincts flare immediately. "What about her, sweetheart?" "I feel sorry for her," Chloe said with the matter-of-fact tone she used when stating something she considered obvious. "She must have been very unhappy to want to hurt children. Happy people don't try to make other people sad." Harrison marveled at his daughter's emotional intelligence. At 7 years old, she could analyze human behavior with a sophistication that many adults lacked. "That's a very wise observation," he said carefully. "But that doesn't excuse what she did to you." "I know," Chloe said. "Bad things that happen to people don't make it okay for them to do bad things to other people. But maybe if someone had helped her when she was little, she wouldn't have grown up to be mean." Madison nodded thoughtfully. "That's why Daddy started the foundation, right? To help people so they don't have to be scared and sad." Harrison looked at his daughters with profound pride. The Jennifer Parker Foundation had indeed been established to provide support for single parents facing medical crises. ensuring that children would never again be placed in vulnerable situations due to their family's circumstances. That's exactly why, Harrison confirmed. We can't change what happened, but we can help make sure it doesn't happen to other children. Later that evening, after the girls were asleep, Harrison sat in his study looking at framed photographs that now covered his desk. There was the professional photo of Madison that had been there for years, but now it was joined by pictures of both girls together, laughing in the garden, building sandcastles at the beach house, dressed up for the school's father-daughter dance. There was also a photo of Jennifer from her healthier days, smiling and beautiful, that Chloe had asked him to display. So she can watch over our family, Chloe had explained with 7-year-old logic that made perfect sense. Harrison's phone buzzed with a text message from Detective Martinez, who had become a family friend over the months since the case closed. Saw the news article about the Foundation's latest project. Jennifer would be proud of what you've built in her memory. The article she was referring to had been published that morning, announcing the Foundation's plan to build a residential facility for children whose parents were undergoing long-term medical treatment. It would ensure that families could stay together during medical crises, and that children would never again be placed with strangers who might abuse their vulnerability. Harrison typed back, "She lives on in everything good that comes from this. Thank you for helping us find each other." As he prepared for bed, Harrison stopped by both girls' rooms as had become his nightly ritual. Madison was fast asleep, her blonde hair spread across her pillow, looking peaceful and secure. In the next room, Chloe was also sleeping, but her hand was closed around her locket as it had been every night since her mother died. Harrison knelt beside her bed and gently adjusted her blankets. As he did, Chloe's eyes fluttered open. "Daddy?" she whispered sleepily. "Just tucking you in, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." "Daddy, are you happy?" she asked, the question that had become her way of making sure her presence in his life was truly wanted. "I'm the happiest man in the world," Harrison replied honestly. "I have 2 beautiful, brilliant daughters who make every day an adventure. I have work that helps other people, and I have a family that loves each other no matter what." Chloe smiled and closed her eyes again. "Good. Mama said you deserve to be happy." As Harrison left her room, he reflected on the truth of that statement. He had spent years building wealth and success, but he had never truly been happy until the day a photograph revealed a little girl's suffering and led him to discover that love was the only thing that really mattered. The silver locket around Chloe's neck caught the hallway light as he closed her door, a symbol of love that had endured separation, tragedy, and time itself. It had brought them together, this unexpected family built from loss and healing, from second chances, and the courage to love despite the pain of inevitable goodbye. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow and learn and love each other more deeply. Chloe would continue to amaze her teachers with her brilliant mind, while learning to trust that she would never be abandoned again. Madison would continue to be the best big sister any child could hope for, protective and loving and wise beyond her years. And Harrison would continue to discover that true success wasn't measured in dollars or stock prices, but in bedtime stories read, scraped knees kissed better, and the sound of children's laughter filling rooms that had been too quiet for too long. The journey that had begun with a shocking photograph had led them all to exactly where they belonged, together, safe, and surrounded by the kind of love that transforms ordinary moments into miracles. In her dreams that night, Chloe danced with both her mothers, the one who had given her life and raised her with courage, and the sister mother who helped her heal. And watching over them all was Harrison, no longer just a successful CEO, but something far more important, a daddy who had proven that love could indeed conquer all, even when it arrived disguised as the most impossible circumstances. Justice had been served, healing had begun, and a family had been born from the ashes of tragedy. It was, Harrison thought as he finally fell asleep, the most important business deal he had ever closed. The acquisition of a heart full of love and a house full of laughter, purchased not with money, but with the promise to protect and cherish what mattered most. Forever and always, just as he had promised a little girl with a silver locket and eyes like his own.